to speak with you, but we are recording, so you can go ahead.
Okay. So I'll give you an introduction of who we are, what I am. I'm a human. But my name is Dr. Jacqueline Gittens. I am the chapter leader for Queens Leah. We are a homeschool support group located in Brooklyn and Queens, as the name suggests. We've been supporting homeschoolers for 35 years. Not me personally, because I wasn't old enough to be supporting homeschoolers 35 years ago. But we have been doing this work. I've been chapter leading for about almost 5 years now, I think, and homeschooling for about 17 years. So I've been doing this for a little while. I have three awesome kids. Two of them have gone on to college. One has opted out of college and decided to start her main life and is doing amazing at it. And then we still have one 13-year-old boy at home. So I'm still going to be in this journey for a little while longer. I'm still excited about it. So it tells you something about the job if you still love it after 17 years. And I am here with a panel of amazing women that have, I was trying to calculate how many years we had all together of homeschooling, but that was a big number. But before you, there are some women that have some amazing experiences in homeschooling. And like I said, we are excited to see all of you today. And what I'll do is a quick introduction of the other panelists so you get an idea of why we can speak from a position of having done some things, having made some mistakes, and also having had some victories. So the first one I'm going to talk about, besides me, and I'll do us in order of our speaking order, would be Shalon Facey, who I met at least 7 years ago. And she is another homeschool mom, also works outside of the home, so she's a busy lady. She has homeschooled one son all the way into college. He's in his, oh, actually, she gave me a bio, so let me read it. She said she's a wife and mother of two, one about to enter his third year of college, and the other a rising 11th grader. Brooklyn native. Shalon's children have always been homeschooled. Shalon has pretty much been eclectic in her approach to homeschooling, changing her approach depending on the needs of her students. And that might be something that we bring up later, changing your approach to teaching depending on which child is in front of you. Second, we have Tina Roman, who is also a member of Brooklyn Queens Leah. She is known as our tech mom. She has been with us for, has it been 7 years, Tina? Yes, 7 years. And started her son from school. He came into homeschooling, and she's been a powerhouse from that moment forward. I guess she was a powerhouse before then, but amazing. Definitely our tech mom, does tutorials for me often because I am not techie. And she knows a lot about when it comes to the technicalities. She's technically minded. So she does technology, but she also works with our, regulations. And so she's got a lot of information about that. She can keep it under her head where I can't. And then lastly, but not least at all, we have Cheryl Carter, who is one amazing lady. She's been homeschooling longer than the other three of us. So she has a lot of information when it comes to homeschooling. She has also helped countless kids when it comes to getting them into college after they've done this whole homeschooling thing, high schooling thing, and become a guidance counselor to help them on that end, getting into college. So that has been amazing, and even helped one of mine. So I am eternally grateful to Cheryl. Also, if you want to hear more about what Cheryl does, besides, I could go on and on about Cheryl, but you can check her out on National Homeschool Advocacy. Is that correct, Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm a expert on national homeschool advocacy. Yes.
And I think Tina's also going to put in the chat there it is, it's learnforcollege.com. So you can check out Cheryl in a bunch of places. Definitely a lady team. So now that we are kind of settled, there are some, I guess, housekeeping kind of things. One is that we will be answering questions toward the end. I'm excited to hear your questions. So if you have any, please write them down and use the raised hand button in your reactions so that we know toward the end to make sure that we ask all of you, answer your questions. And what was the other thing? Was that it? Just raised hand? Okay. And we are muting everybody just so that we keep the room quiet while the presenters are presenting. So what I'll talk about first after our intros is the trials of starting homeschooling through high school. I remember when I first started homeschooling, this was when my oldest, who is 22, she's going to be 23 this year, when she started first grade is when we decided to start homeschooling. And it was such a hard thing to say, okay, I'm going to homeschool this person, because I didn't know if I was capable. I was scared. I had a degree, but it was in law, so it had nothing to do with educating a child. I was petrified. And I also have mother-in-laws that were in education already. And these very focused individuals that were like, are you sure about this? Do you think you can actually do this, Jackie? You don't even have any credentials for this. And they have been teachers for years. So that did not help my self-esteem at all, I can tell you that. But I did it anyway. And the first year, it was pretty difficult. And I know we're not talking about first graders here, but I am giving you this information because when it came to this first grader now coming into 8th grade, we realized that high school is right around the corner. What do we do? Because we had noticed that so many of our fellow homeschoolers were jumping ship at this point. They had decided that middle school was as far as they were going, and they were already making plans to get their students, their children, into a high school, be it a specialized school, music school, or a zone school, or whatever. They were already working toward that. We weren't sure that we wanted to do that. But I was scared, just like it was first grade all over again, at the idea of high school. Because now we're looking at not, elementary reading. We're not looking at elementary math. We're looking at high school level classes. And those same insecurities I had back at first grade were starting to rise up all over again. And it was just like I say, first grade all over again, where I was petrified. And could I actually do this? Could I teach algebra? Could I teach the biology that she needed, and chemistry and trigonometry? And let me tell you, I was not good at any of the things that I just mentioned in my own upbringing. I was terrible at math. I did love bio. Chemistry had me shaken. I was afraid of. And that had something to do with my lack of math skills. And they had not improved dramatically over the course of me homeschooling this child. It did get a little better because in homeschooling, we learn a lot as teachers. But it wasn't at the point where I felt confident going into high school math or high school science or the other things that she will be tackling. So I did end up obviously taking that step because she made it through high school and into college. But it was scary. And I did notice that there were a lot of homeschoolers that were not taking that step along with me. But there were also a lot of homeschoolers that had already taken that step. We have people that walked before me, like Cheryl, and the former chapter leader of Brooklyn Queens Lear. Her name is Suze. And I got to see her kids at graduation wearing, the blue caps that we have at our graduations for our seniors. And numerous others were also doing that same work of homeschooling their kids through high school. And because I got to see those graduations, it gave me a little bit of confidence that, if one man can do it, maybe I could too. And I started the work of it, and we, started out their first year, and I started to realize, and I'm coming into my next area, that I didn't have to do all of the work like it was back in first grade, because through middle school and coming into high school, there was some legwork that I had been doing the whole time. And that was the work of learning to coach my student rather than to be their end-all teacher, to teach them everything they knew. So teaching them how to teach themselves to some degree. And that came with different curriculum that we used, that even the way we used our textbooks was a little bit different at that point. It was a lot more of them reading through their chapters, understanding how to find the information that they needed, maybe giving me back a written narrative of what they had read in that chapter, or maybe going through a workbook and answering all their questions based on what they understood. So we would even go through the work of breaking down their textbooks at the beginning of the year, where I would set it into quarters, just like I would have to be presenting to the DOE. And once we had quarters in the book, then we could set it out for each month, how much we would have to get accomplished. And then each week, how much would we have to get accomplished? And then once they understood what the breakdown was, now it's you follow this path. And if I had a kid that was going too slowly, then we slowed down a little bit. And maybe we took off, we worked on certain holidays that we didn't need. What we had learned that a long time ago. There were holidays in the school year that we didn't have to take off. We're not Jewish. I don't know if anybody knew that. We're not Jewish. So we didn't have to take those holidays off. I'm not Italian, so we didn't take off Columbus Day. There were times when we didn't have to take off from school, that the kids could just continue working. Even over the summer, they could continue working. So there were times when, they could do more work because we had special holidays, like birthdays were a holiday. So we didn't take off election day. Why are you taking off election day? Get back to work. You're not going out to vote yet. And even if you did, it only takes like a half hour and then you're back and let's get to work. So we took our time in certain areas, and then in other areas, we realized that we didn't have to take so much time. I had my two oldest kids, voracious readers. So in their areas of like history and science, they were able to knock it out fairly easily because they could get through the information very quickly, and get me back the assignments that I needed. And in that, allowing them to homeschool themselves with me checking in more as a supervisor than as a head teacher at the front of the classroom at all times. And if they fell into issues, because sometimes trigonometry can be difficult, or chemistry gets a little bit out of hand because they didn't understand. In those instances, because I didn't understand either, we got tutors. Those were a great resource for us when it came to math, when it came to sciences that I didn't get, because honestly, I was a pretty good student in school, but everything wasn't my forte. And that was true for my kids as well. I have one kid that is not a good speller. And that was fine. They all have their own strengths. And so do I. I have some strengths and I have some weaknesses. And recognizing that in me helped me to recognize it in them and not feel overburdened to make them perfect in every area. And so treating my kid as though they are human and they're going to have some weaknesses and some strengths. We worked with the areas where they had strength in, and we didn't have to pay so much attention to their strong areas because they were going to get those out easily. But areas where they had weakness, we spent more time together in those areas. And if it was an area that I was also weak in, we got a tutor. And blessedly, there were very few areas for each of my oldest ones. I'm not talking about the younger one yet because he's just getting into high school this year. But math was, I think, for both girls, an area where we almost had to get tutors for both of them. And I say almost because my oldest was a go-getter. She wouldn't allow me to get a tutor because my girls are frugal. So what she did was she went on Khan Academy and she researched her questions until she found the answers. It was Khan Academy. She Googled information until she found out where she was having trouble with. And this was a kid that would plow through areas in math that were just giving her a hard time until she figured it out. Kid number 2 was not that girl. She's like, Mommy, I don't know how to do it. What are you going to do about that? So then it was on me to find somebody to help her figure it out. Kids are different. They're going to get through, and she's still kind of that girl, but they're going to get through things differently, and allowing them to be that person that they are, it's okay. So I found her the help that she needed, and she got through awesomely. Now I have number 3, and I have to tell you, I am scared like it's first grade again. And that's okay to be scared, to feel like, not super confident, but that's where bravery comes in, because brave people are not the ones that aren't afraid. They're the ones that continue even though they are afraid. So I say I'm afraid with number 3, like it's first grade, only because now I'm working with a student that has some learning issues, and I've never had that before. So this opens up a different area for me in working with him, and what does that look like in high school? And I'm asking questions. I'm looking for people that understand how this works in this area. Each kid was very different. My first one, artist. So us getting her into college was a much different situation than number 2, that was my academic. We needed strong academics to get her where she wanted to go. Where number 1, we just needed a great what is it called? What's the word, Show? I know you know it. The portfolio. I read your lips. So we needed a strong portfolio for number 1, the artist. She also had great grades, but number 2 needed strong grades, strong classwork. So strong classes that she was coming out of to get into the school that she wanted, and also get scholarships. So there are some pitfalls we're all going to fall into. There's mistakes we're all going to make, and that's perfectly fine, because that whole thing about being human. Same for our kids, and giving them the grace to be human. If they don't get all A's, like, why would anybody? I mean, people do get all A's, but we're not all perfect in every area. So with my, first one, she was an artist, but she wasn't great at spelling. Should I be upset with her because she's not great at spelling? No, she was an amazing artist. And she's also a voracious reader. She's also a good person. So looking for the things in the person that are awesome, and not worrying too much about things like spelling, as she's got spell check now. Everybody's got a phone, and if she really needs to know how to spell a word, she can figure it out. She's honestly a much better speller at this point because she types a lot. She writes a lot. So some areas where they're weak at, sometimes it doesn't always last and stay that way. All right, so I have been talking a lot. I am that girl that talks a lot. I am going to give up the mic, and I think Shalon is next.
Hello. Hi. So as Jackie mentioned, I have 2 that I homeschool. They've never been to traditional school. They've always been homeschooled. And I have 1 in college and 1 currently in high school. So I've been tasked with talking about my personal experience with homeschooling a child into high school. And a lot of what Jackie said is, I'm probably going to reiterate, or maybe I don't even need to mention since Jackie said it so well. In going into high school, I was a little intimidated, right? Because I feel like from elementary through middle school, I could kind of figure it out. I kind of knew what I needed to do, what they needed, what their weaknesses were, and kind of can get through. But then when my oldest was ready for high school, that was a little intimidating because I'm thinking, for me, I felt like, okay, high school is like real deal, right? Like, elementary, like we're doing stuff, we're having fun, but like high school is like serious, especially if you want to go to college. And so talking to other people and listening to different groups like this helped me to see that high school doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be scary. And I think that helped take some of the load off of me. And so we kind of approached it in a way that wasn't too overwhelming for either one of us. And so what I did was, when we started high school, is I went online and I got, because I knew that my son wanted to go to college. Like, that was clear. He had already said that that's what he wanted to do. That was the direction. And so we looked up what's required from a high schooler to get into college. What type of classes do they need to have? And so we got that. We knew, okay, you need to have these sciences, this amount of math, this amount of electives, etc. And then what I would do is, at the beginning of every year, or right before the year started in the summer, we would sit down and we would say, okay, these are the subjects that you have to learn in these 4 years. What do you want to do this year? So we weren't traditional in terms of like, okay, you're a freshman, you have to do bio, you have to do algebra. Like, we didn't do that kind of thing. We're just like, well, what are you interested in? As long as we get it in 4 years, which one? And so we would sit down and he would pick, okay, I want to do this one. This sounds good, cool. I want to do that. And then we would say, okay, now that we've got this out of the way, what are you interested in learning that you haven't learned before, right? And we're going to make that your elective. And so we would kind of look into different classes and different things that he was interested in. And then we would add that into his year. My approach often changed, as Jackie mentioned, depending on their needs. So depending on, if we tried something and it didn't seem like it was working, we would try a different way of doing it, right? We would try a different approach, but as long as we got through the work. As high school went on, I kind of looked through what he needed in terms of like where he was. And for him, he is more of a structure type of person. He needed to kind of be held accountable. Not that I, as a parent, don't hold him accountable, but it's different sometimes. When you're the teacher, they're kind of like, oh, no, I didn't finish it, but I can finish it later, right? So there's not like this. So we decided for his last 2 years, we joined a homeschool group that was a little bit more structured, that he had to be someplace every week. And he had assignments that were due, and that helped him, because I knew that if he wanted to go to college, for him particularly, he needed to kind of have that little bit of a push behind him to get him through, so that when he got to college, it wouldn't be like a shock for him. And so that's what we did. So he was still homeschooled, but we kind of tried a different approach, and that helped. It helped him for a couple of reasons. One, he's a kid that needed peers. And so it allowed him to have high school friends, right? It had allowed him to have peers. And it also allowed him to have the structure. He was the kid that at 2 or 3 would wake up and say, what are we doing today, mommy? Right? And needed to know blow by blow, what are the things we were doing. So I couldn't say, well, let's figure it out, or this, like, he needed structure. And so that's what we did. When it came time to apply for college, that was interesting. So his junior year, like most people do, we did the whole college tours. We looked at colleges that had majors that he thought he might be interested in, and we put them on our list, and we went and we visited as many as we could. He is a 2020 graduate, so a lot of things that were normal for a lot of high school kids, he didn't get to have. So there were points where we had a lot of virtual college tours, because as we got into 2020, there were just some schools that we just couldn't visit in person. For us personally, there were, like, I think for every family, you've got to decide what's the most important for you in that process of having your child go to college, right? For some people, they want it to be close to home and not so far from home. For some people, it doesn't matter. For some people, it matters if they're around places. For us, it was very important that wherever he went to school, that we had a sister church that was nearby, so that he would have a spiritual family that he could call upon and draw upon while he was away, if he decided to go away from home. So in looking at colleges, we made sure that there were sister churches that were nearby, and we contacted those churches. And so we did a lot of that work to make sure that all over, well-rounded, that he was going to be taken care of. I did learn a lot in the whole applying for college, prospect. I just thought, we'll apply for colleges, he'll get accepted or he won't get accepted, we'll decide where he wants to go, and that's it. I quickly learned that that isn't quite all you have to do. So, besides putting together a transcript, which I'm sure Cheryl will do an excellent job at talking about, but I learned about things like a mid-year report. I never knew what that was. Like, there are things that I had to do that I was like, I went to public school, so I had a counselor that did a lot of that stuff, and I just had to show up and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and then she did everything else. So there were things that were required of me that I had to put together to help him to look good for these schools. We had to make sure that he was getting ready for his SATs or ACTs, right? So you have to decide which one, if your child is going to do, and make sure that they have that. We had to look at, besides his academics, we had to look at his extracurricular activities and kind of start compiling a list of those things, whether it be sports or classes or hobbies or community service, because all of those things help bolster them for going to school. So all of that was a lot of things that I kind of learned towards the end that now I'm ready for child number 2 to do. The only difference is my child number 2 is similar to Jackie's number 1 and very artistic and very kind of like laid back and so yeah, this is going to be different. So high school is already different, and so putting together what for her is going to be different than the first one. So Jackie, I will tap you on the shoulder about portfolios, because I think that's what we need, or something along those lines. I have no clue about any of this stuff. So we're just figuring that out for her. But I think what helped me too was, and I remember years ago when my son was probably 2 or 3, when we were just deciding to homeschool, I remember doing a homeschool conference. And one of the things that a speaker spoke about was you kind of get an idea of what your child wants and you work towards that. So work backwards. And so knowing that he wanted to go to college, we started from that. Like, okay, he wants to go to college, so what are the things we need to get him into college? And so we worked in that direction. When he finally got his acceptances, at this point, we were fully virtual. So again, college starting out for him was a lot different than a lot of other kids were. So the information sessions were fully virtual, but we called and we made information and we sat down in front of the TV and we just watched these information sessions and figured out which schools he wanted to go to. He narrowed them down to 2, and we let him make the final decision on which one he chose to go to. And then he decided that that's where he wanted to go, and he made his choice. It was different. His first year, I will say his first year was virtual because of COVID. So that was a challenge in and of itself. Some of it was a little bit helpful because he'd been homeschooled, but then also not being around people is also challenging too. So it came with its challenges. So that's my experience in a nutshell. I hope it was clear, but feel free to ask me any questions about anything that I spoke about or forgot or didn't mention. So.
We're taking all the questions, I think, toward the end. Is that right, Tina? Okay. And I also wanted to, before Shalon gets too far, because she jogged some memories. Before we get to Tina, that Shalon mentioned that if your child is going to college. Now, I think some of us, and I was one of them way back, one of those people that assumed that because I had done all this work, that my child was definitely going to college one day. And also, it's my kid, so of course she's going to college. Of course he's going to college. And I'll tell you, when my oldest was 5 years old, I think number 2 was just born, and I had a dream that both of them were going to be doctors. It was going to be Dr. Gittens and Dr. Gittens. And they quickly expressed to me that that wasn't a real thing and that they were going to be rock stars instead. And I had to really come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to get that dream. And that more importantly than my dream was that my job wasn't to get my dreams done. and in their lives, but to help them with their dreams. And that's a different approach to parenting and homeschooling, when you're trying to help them to fulfill the things that they need to do rather than to do the things that you want them to do. And with that in mind, college was definitely one of the choices, but it wasn't the only choice anymore. One of the other choices was just to be done after high school and head off to work, whatever that might look like. We had been creating some skills for my girls, all three of my children in swim team. As soon as I could get them with a coach in a swim team, they were swimming. And 2 out of 3 kids have now used that in part for work at some point or other. One was a lifeguard. The other one is right now being a swim instructor. So for art, one of them taught art for a little while. Right now, the youngest one has a job too. So they sometimes find work in the things that we've been pouring into them. They didn't always want to go to swim team, but I thought it was an important life skill, and they were able to use it later on. So maybe done and then on to work is a possibility. The third one is a trade school. So there are options besides college. It's not the only one. College can be expensive. College can be a burden to some people. It is the ultimate for some people. My number 2, that is all she's dreamed of. Like, she came out of the womb ready for that mortar and the mortar board. She wanted it. Go get her, always wanted to be in college, can't wait to graduate, and is already thinking about her next degree on top of this one. So that's going to be some kids, but recognizing also that people have different paths. And with college in mind, one thing Shalon mentioned also was having them in classes that are more structured maybe than homeschooling. As you can tell, my homeschooling is not super, super duper structured. That's also me. I am not super duper structured. Tina, on the other hand, color codes things, different lady. But I did find that my girls needed more structure. They needed college, and New York City has a program called College Now, where our kids are able to take college classes for college credit, and dual enrolled, so they get a full credit in that class in high school, and also 3 credits for college. They do it simultaneously. It is completely free, and even the textbooks are free. So that is something that you may want to look into if you're interested in having your student go to college. College Now is a great place to start. I think it's for 11th and 12th graders in New York.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that, but yeah, 11th and 12th grade, which is helpful because they end up graduating and going into college with college credits. My son went into college with 9 college credits, which is great, right? So that kind of is a help in a both, and it gives them some college experience before actually going into college.
Exactly. And it also helps college be a little bit cheaper, because I think both of my girls had 12 credits. So that's 12 credits they never have to pay for. And they've already got them before they got out of high school. So I wanted to talk about those 2. And then also, Shalon mentioned art and portfolios. And we also went to a conference called the NACAC, the National, I think it's, hold on a second, National NACAC.
National Association of College Counselors.
And they have an art portion where we went to one, and they had art teachers from looked like 100 colleges come out, and they looked at my daughter's portfolio and told her where she needed to do better, get stronger, or what parts that she brought in her portfolio were spot on. So that was a great resource for us. So maybe look that one up if you've got that RT student. And I'm going to stop talking again and let Tina do some talking.
Can I jump in real quick before Tina speaks? Yeah. Tina's like, yes, please. Really quickly, the other thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot is when you're looking at schools, find out what their requirements are. So pretty much all schools have requirements for homeschoolers. And so find out what those requirements are. I will say, this is just a little thing that I found out, is that the New York schools require way more than any other school outside of New York required. I will tell you that. Partly, I think it's because they're aware of the requirements that New York State has for us in terms of homeschooler, as a homeschooler, and so they want a lot of that information. It's a lot. So if you're thinking of your kid going to a New York school, be prepared that there's going to be a lot of extra work that's going to be required of you for them school, as opposed to other schools. Most other schools, we just applied to, like any other student would, and just had to show, that they are, in compliance with whatever, but that was it. But New York schools do require a lot of more jumping through hoops in the whole application process. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
So many hoops. And then we've applied out of state, and they didn't ask for hardly anything by comparison to what New York was required. But New York has been that from the
New York is
entire
extra.
homeschooling.
Yes.
Tina, we're done.
No, y'all not. Y'all left me nothing to talk about. You guys, it's between between the kid not going to school, between the checking to make sure what the colleges want. Y'all talked about outside of the regulations themselves. Y'all mentioned everything I was going to mention, but again, let me just go from there. My name is Tina. As Jackie mentioned earlier, I have been homeschooling going on 7 years now, which is hard to believe. We started in the middle of second grade and just kept going. And, everyone else, because you never know what kind of reaction you're going to get. So everyone else, I was like, oh, we'll take it 1 year 1 year at a time. But honestly, I knew we're going all the way through. I'm going to put a link to the regulations as I continue talking, because I also have another one I want to link to. As I mentioned, we just started 9th grade. And I would say if you haven't started high school yet, for New York especially, this is a conversation you need to have with your kid, because depending on the district you're in, and I know we have people outside of New York City, that's why I'm mentioning this, depending on the district you're in, a lot of the districts will make it hard to take your kid from homeschooling once you've started high school and allow them to go ahead and start in the school. So normally we usually say that homeschooling high school is an all or nothing thing. Either you're going to stop at 8th grade, like Jackie mentioned, everyone she knew was stopping there and enrolling their kids in school, which is like the easiest thing at that point if you don't want to take on high school. But if you are going to take on high school, understand that more than likely you're taking it for the long haul. Only because with New York doing Regents exams and all the requirements that they have, they don't like to accept the credits that you've homeschooled. Now, your child may have done amazing. It's possible that they did everything they wanted, 9th, 10th grade, but maybe 11th grade, they want to go back. What I usually tell people is, if you have intentions of sending your child to school in high school, and you've already started homeschooling, speak with the district first and find out if they're going to accept your homeschool credits. And if they do, get it in writing so that it's very clear that this is what we've done. These are the hoops that we've had to jump through. This is what we're doing. You said you were going to take it. Here it is in writing. You said you were taking it so that my child can enter freely. That is not the easiest route to take. I think it's easier to homeschool high school than to try to do that back and forth, because it's going to be challenging. Now, with regards to the regulations, if you've been homeschooling prior to high school, then you're already familiar with units when it comes to 7th and 8th grade. The total amount of hours from the year change from 900 hours for grades 1 to 6 to 990 hours for grades 9 to 12. We still say all hours count towards homeschooling, but when you're coming to high school, maybe you want to do, not maybe, but you want to do a little more when it comes to tracking. For New York, they say a unit is 6,480 minutes. That basically means 108 hours for the school year for one unit. Now, when you're looking at the regulations, I'll give an example. It says English has 4 units. That doesn't mean that you're doing 4 units every year. The hours are cumulative. So that means each year of high school from grades 9 to 12, you are completing 1 unit of that subject. Now, where we get a lot of questions is when it comes to something like PE, physical education. Physical education is 2 units. If you don't have an active child, well, let me do the easy one first. If you have an active child, you're going to hit those 2 units of athletics very quickly and you can be done. But if you don't have that athletic child, then you can break it up over the 4 years. Those 2 units, it doesn't have to be a full unit for the year. It could be half a unit each year. That comes down to, where did I have with that? I lost it. Half a unit is 216 hours over the 4 years. So that's 54 hours per year, 90 minutes per week, and a 36-week schedule for the year. So 5 days a week for 36 weeks, if you're doing that normal schedule, and how you do that over the entire year is completely up to you, then that breaks down to about 90 minutes a week of gym, which is easily 45 minutes twice a week, which if you think about it, if you went to public school, that's about what we did minus the half year that you still have to do for health. So the breakdown is very easy, as long as you can remember that the units can be either a full unit for the year, which would be your 4 years of English and history, and everything else gets broken down pretty simply, then you're good to go. The only requirements in terms of an actual topic that needs to be covered comes in history. In history, you have 1 year of American history that must be covered. You have a half unit of government and then a half unit of economics. The other 2 years is an elective if you're choosing. Now, some districts have been telling people they have to do global history. As a homeschooler, you don't. It comes down to, in school, they usually do 2 years of global history. So it's 9th and 10th grade. If your child is not interested in learning that, then you can choose any part of history you want to do. You can do more, you can dive deeper into US history, you could do ancient history. However you want to cover those 2 units of history is entirely up to you. Now, going back to your college bound students, that is where you really need to know what are the colleges asking for. Because if you have a college bound kid, it's likely they're going to want specific subjects to be covered. So you want to know what those are so that you can make sure that's covered, but at the same time, following your child's interests. Now, you both heard Jackie and Shalon say they had college bound kids. I don't. My son has been very adamant about not wanting to go to college. He's like, I don't want to go to college. I want to go to work. I want to be in entertainment. And I took 8th grade, about halfway through 8th grade, we sat down and we had a talk. And like, listen, we're coming up on high school. What do you want to do? Am I enrolling you in school? Are we going to homeschool through? He's like, I was like, really think about it. Let's sit down. Let's go over the pros and the cons. Because I knew once we started, most likely I wasn't going to enroll him anyway. Okay. My choice was we're just going to go all the way through and have at it because I know my kid. And that's the other thing. Take into account, your kid's personality. And I knew my kid, as strong-headed as he is and as independent as he is, I didn't want to put him in an environment that was going to set him up for his personality, that was going to set him up to lose. So after we discussed it and we did all the pros and cons, I will be honest, his main reason for not going was he didn't want to have to be on a school bus at 7 in the morning. I'll be honest, that was my kid. I was like, all right, fine. I said, when we started 9th grade 3, we was like, what time do you want to start school? 10 o'clock. You're messing up my schedule, kid, but okay. So we start, and I will say, I've been nervous because Jackie says, I'm a planner. I am a planner. My kid is not. He is very laid back, fly by night. And I'm like, okay, we're going to have to find a common ground. I will let you choose the school day. But if I find that you're slacking and we're spending longer than what we should be, then we're going to have to start earlier. And I'll tell you, he's been on the ball. I don't know if it's my scheduling powers, which I doubt, or he's just gotten a little more responsible, which is probably a combination of everything. But these past 3 weeks of school, we've gotten done what we needed to get done and still had time to pursue his interest with time to spare. I'm a little bit scared because I don't know how long that's going to last, to be honest, but I'm going to accept it for what it is and be happy, and we're going to keep going. So like I said, the regulations, if you've been homeschooling before now, they're very easy. If you haven't, and like you're just starting high school or you're pulling your kid out of high school to homeschool, I would say make sure you get what they have completed from the school. Because I didn't even know there was a mid-year report, Sean. I was like, really? There's something called that? Okay. But again, I don't have that college-bound kid, but there are things that you gotta research. The regulations, the way they're listed out for homeschoolers is the bare minimum of what you need to graduate. Bare minimum. And if you have a college-bound kid, you're gonna need to do more than what's on there, regardless of what path they decide to take. For my kid, because he's not college bound, I'm still preparing him because I know that we're either going to do some sort of trade or apprenticeship. So I'm exposing him to tons of things to gain his interest. And we're researching what are the different fields of entertainment because he knows he wants to be in entertainment, but that's such a huge field that we got a lot of research to go over these 4 years. But what I love most about homeschooling is we have the freedom to do that. Because if he was spending 5.5, 6 hours at a school every day, then to come home, do 3 hours or 3 to 4 hours of homework to do research papers and everything else, he wouldn't have the freedom to do this research that we now have the time to do. He wouldn't have the freedom to pursue his interests that he has as a homeschooler. So we can take care of what's required for us to do. And because it's just, I only have one, because it's just me and him, we're not tied to this 6-hour brick and mortar homeschool day to then come home and be tired and stressed and have to do more. So, yeah, I mean, I really think that's it. The regulations are not that hard. You can find me anywhere on social media, just, look for Tina L. Roman and you'll find me. If you have more questions about how the regulations work, if you go to our website, Brooklyn Queens Leah, because sometimes families don't understand the regulations. And if you go to our website at the very bottom, you'll see it says BQ Leah Regs Cheat Sheet. That is a nice 2-page breakdown of what the regulations are. And it's very simple. You can just look at it and say, okay, this is what we have to do. I explained the breakdown of how the partial credits work. So it's a nice little cheat sheet than trying to read the regulations and understand those where sometimes you don't, it's just not clicking. Sometimes you just need to speak to someone to get it. So again, we'll be answering questions at the end. I think I covered all of that, including my not college bound kid, but it's nice to have someone else. And Jackie, I'm gonna throw it back to you.
And I just wanted to throw in before we get on to Cheryl's part, that Tina mentioned PE. And if you have that kid, I did not have that kid. I made 3 of them because I insisted that PE was going to be one of those things that was, it was a deal that I made with me. So I made a deal with myself, which is weird, I know. But I was going to give my kids a gift. And it was for their 18th birthday. And for my girls, it was going to be hair that was untreated. So they had hair that was natural and it was never going to be treated up until their 18th birthday. In addition to that, I was going to give them strong bodies. So I made them all go into swim team and they had to stay in swim team. I think my middle one, who is a lawyer in her spirit, got out of it a year early, but she was already a strong body. She was the one kid that made a 6-pack. And was super proud of her 6-pack from swim team. And it was because of the 6-pack that I allowed her to have her senior year without swim team. She is now a swim instructor and loves it. And then, so strong body, strong hair. And there was also no piercings and tattoos up until the 18th birthday. So there were some things that I said, your body is going to be, this is the gift I give you for your 18th birthday. And in part, it was those 3 ideas. I'm set up a little bit different there, but what I'm meaning to tell you all this about is that Parks Department is where they went to swim team. And it's not only swim team, they also have taekwondo and golf, track and field, all kind of things. And these were free. So it's a free resource if you are a New York City citizen, what is it? One of those. So if you live in New York City.
Resident.
That works. I like my words too. You live in New York City, Parks Department has these opportunities if you're interested. And if you have a Parks Department near you that has those. We don't have a pool near us, so I do trek out for him to be a part of a swim team. The last thing I also want to mention, because Tina touched on it and Cheryl may also touch on it, that there are different levels of college bound. So there's a student that's not going to college, but there's also a student that's just going to go with a lower amount of, I guess, credits coming in. And they may just want to go into, you know, a 2-year school, and they're not going to need the same stringency that they would need for going into a 4-year school. So taking that into account too, that, you know, if my student doesn't have, you know, what it takes to get into Harvard, maybe we can't homeschool them through high school. Nope, you can. A student may start out going into a 2-year school, and they may not need as much as they would need as it would take to get into a 4-year school. So that may be an option if you have a student that isn't ready to do it all right now. And with that said, before I say more, I'm getting out of Cheryl's way.
All right. So I'm going to be actually quick because for 2 reasons. One, I'm doing the college next week. And so I'll get into all the particulars of things that you have to do. So I'll just give you a round, and some of the things have already been said. I have 5 kids. And so I know some of you are going to start calculating. So I have 12-year-old twins and I have a 30-year-old. No, wait a minute. He's 31. Yes, he's 31. And yes, they were all my husband and I kids, same dad. We have been married for, I'm probably going to get this wrong, I think 36, 37 years. I don't know. I'm not sure. But my point is that I've been homeschooling a while. And my 3 older kids have went on to college. They went on to graduate school. As a matter of fact, my son is, besides he's working full time in upper level management, and he's 3 months from getting his PhD. My daughter, my second daughter, is at a college now where she is actually over the learning center. Again, because she was very much into school. Our third actually went to college and then decided she wanted to be a missionary. And my husband said, I wish you would have told us that you wanted to be a missionary before we lopped out $60,000 a year for college. But she's decided now she's in graduate school. And then we have our 12-year-old twins. So yes, ladies, it can be done. Boy twins who are active and who tell me every day they're not going to college. And I keep telling them, yes, they are. So the reason why I said that is not just my kids, but over the years, I've been the guidance counselor. I've been the homeschool guidance counselor. So I've had people call me, and I've worked with a lot of families over the years. And I'll tell you, I work with families. If you're thinking like, oh, she worked with kids who are really brilliant. All your kids are brilliant, by the way. But I've worked with kids to get them in Harvard. I got to get kids in Harvard, in Princeton. I gotten kids in Ivies. And I've also gotten kids in community college who wouldn't have necessarily even gotten in community college. I've also worked with special needs kids. Matter of fact, that's kind of more of my, I'm gearing up that's actually more of my specialty these days. And so, and yes, I'm the author of homeschooling your child to college. And so I'm not going to repeat everything, but I do bring some experience that works. I'm not going to go over everything, but I will, because everything's already been said. But in terms of curriculum, so the 3 things I'm going to speak on is curriculum. Curriculum really has to do with what's right for your kid. And you can have, even when you're doing the transcript, because I'm speaking on doing the transcript, my transcript, even for my 3 kids, it looks really different for even all 3 kids. The older ones. And so I just want to say that there's a lot of things that you could do with your kid, and don't think that I have to do it this way. The whole reason why you are homeschooling is so that you could do it differently, and you don't have to do it the way everyone else does. And a matter of fact, sometimes if you do it differently, that kind of gives your kid the edge in college. Um, to mention kids who aren't necessarily going to college, I will say this, and again, this just years of experience. I've had kids who actually went to the police department, and the police department has to verify their transcript. So sometimes don't, we had a kid who was really, really great. And anyway, we had to work with them. I had to go back and to have his mom do some things just to make sure that the police department accepted his transcript. So it is important what Tina was saying, that we follow the regulations. So you can't just say, oh, we read some books, we read some English novels, but don't put it down. Like, make sure you put it down. When it comes to record keeping, make sure you put everything down, because you don't know when it's gonna be beneficial to your child. In terms of the transcript, now I'm gonna say this, and I'm probably gonna upset the apple cart a little bit when I say this, but I'm gonna just tell you the truth. For my kids, I didn't do their transcripts until like right before they were applying to college and going to the Common App. And for some people, they're having, oh, good. Oh, okay. I always felt guilty to honestly tell, but I didn't really do it. What I will tell you do in terms of record keeping is just keep track of what you did. Because what Shalane means, even when she mentioned the mid-year report, that's on the Common App. And a lot of homeschoolers don't realize that they will be doing the Common App. The Common App is, some of you are saying, what the heck is the Common App? It's a common application. There's a few things that's not, and by the way, that's not the only one now, but that's the main one that's used. That's when you want to make sure that you have, you have to do the record keeping. So you can't just, unlike schools, they don't ask schools for things, but they will ask homeschools. So what did you do? And it's not hard. So some of you might be panicking saying, oh no, it's actually very, very easy. And it's just as simple as just remembering, if you use the textbook, who the publisher was, and just a little summary, very little summaries. Like, think computer line. It's not a lot. The only thing they're really checking for is to see if you really did what you said, because, and I know we probably have people here who homeschool different styles. By the time you're in high school, you have relaxed homeschoolers or unschoolers where they're not really using books. You have unit studies. You have where people are doing unit studies. And I'm assuming, because you've been homeschooling a while, and you could ask me that if not, that you're aware of most of the different styles. But that's really what the college is looking for. Again, I'm going to speak fast because you could ask me a question. But just to know that, you just mainly have to keep track of that. But I mean, I'm just being frank with you. I could tell you, and so Jackie knows it. Like, I could tell you, my son got he got a very generous scholarship. Actually, all my older kids got generous scholarships. And I should say the kids who I work with generally got generous scholarships because we started working early. But again, I won't get into that. That's come back for the college one. But I will say that keep in mind in general what you're doing, so that record keeping, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you'll be surprised. I always say God's grace is sufficient. Like, my son got a full scholarship, and we did, even though I was helping other people, it's just, he didn't even take the PSAT. There were certain things he didn't even do, but we still were able to do things, and that he got a scholarship. The kids I work with, for the most part, when they come to me, they'll ask me. I do work with kids getting scholarships. I don't guarantee scholarships, so let me put that out there now. I don't guarantee it, but just to look at it. In terms of, just to give one source, and then I'm going to stop speaking because you probably have more questions. I just want to give this one source, and I don't know how to do this, Tina, so you have to do it. It's mooc.org, and it has 3,000 online courses, and it's training career. So if your kid is not even necessarily interested in college, it makes your transcript look more robust, and it gives your kids something to do. When I say something to do, all of our kids, as I could say, like, even though all my kids went to college and went on to graduate school and to want to get terminal degrees, they all were very different in the way and they approach it. And even now, sometimes I think my boys saying they don't want to go to school, and who knows, they don't want to go to college. Well, they don't want to go to school either, but they don't have a choice. They're being homeschooled. Some of it is it's people have this idea and kids about I'm constantly going to be studying. Am I going to be constantly sitting in front of a book? And there's a tons of different colleges. There's online schools that you could work with. There's some colleges that are not as rigorous. Honestly, there's some colleges that are just not as rigorous that your kid could get in. There's some colleges, even I remember when my older kids were looking at graduate schools, um, there's research graduate school and then there's practical graduate school. So you could pick out what college. So don't also just write your kid off to say they're not going to do it, but also think of what that kid is geared to be. Like we need really, really good, godly police officers. I'm so glad that some of our homeschool kids, they decide to become police officers. I'm so glad that some of our homeschool kids decide they were going to go in the military. I'm really, really happy. I don't feel that my kids are any less of a success if they decide that they didn't want to do something. I mean, I kind of made the point about my daughter saying she went to a very rigorous college, and she was still going to be the valedictorian for the college. And then she graduated. We were like, yeah, you're going to go to graduate school because any graduate school would have wanted her. And she says, I want to be a missionary. She says, I want to help people. We're like, okay. It wasn't what we thought we were going to hear, but we love her, still do. And so I'm just saying that you had to be open with your kids. And I'm going to stop talking so that people could ask questions. But that MOOC.org is really good. It's 3,000 free online courses. It's free. And so you can find something, there's computer courses. Also when we think about what our kids in high school, like teaching them a trade, you could teach them a trade and even have them apprentice. How many of you ever pay something electrical break in your house? You're going to pay more for that than you would pay somebody who's a college graduate. I'm just saying. So there's other things to look at with our kids. Okay, and I promise I'm going to be quiet now and ask questions. But that MOOC.org is really good.
So we will be taking questions. If you do have one, put your hand up. And I wanted to make a mention also the letter of completion, which happens toward the end of your last year in high school. And that's something that in New York State, it's not really called the letter of completion anymore. Do you know what's the right name for it?
It's always been called the letter of substantial equivalency. The challenge is that it's still, which it's not one thing I'm glad you brought it up because it's one thing I forgot to mention. It's unfortunately not every district, the superintendent will consent to giving it. In order to request it, you have to have homeschooled and reported for all 4 years of high school. And then there's like a sample letter that you can send to request for the superintendent to give you to say, hey, it's basically our equivalent of a diploma, for lack of a better word, but that's basically what it is. And again, it's really only something you need here for the New York schools if you're applying to New York colleges and universities. Outside of New York State, they don't care. They will take your homeschool issued diploma in most cases, along with your transcripts. And I'm excited to speak with you next week, Cheryl. I just want to say, but anyway, but so yeah, it's called it's depending on what district you're in. You want it to say letter of substantial equivalency because that's the way it is referred to in I believe it's the Q&A of the regulations. But as I mentioned, it's again one of those things again that's at the consent of the superintendent. If you're in a district that your superintendent does not give it, they may not use those. Maybe they'll say letter of completion, and it's just saying that yeah, you reported all 4 years. We have your records. Here you go. If you can get it to say substantial equivalent, I know a lot of New York schools prefer that. I also know a lot of New York districts will not say that. So it really, really depends on your district. The only thing I can say at this point is contact your district and see if there's a change in administration. That might change later on. I do know that between Homeschool New York, which is our parent organization, BCLEA, Homeschool New York, LEA, and HSLDA have legislation going on right now that they're trying to make it across the board that if you have reported your 4 years of high school, then your district has to give that letter. Pray that goes through, because that will make a lot of people's lives a lot simpler. But I'll leave it at that.
And just a heads up on that, we've been waiting for that for a couple of years now. So
Yeah.
while you're praying, recognize that they are being very hesitant about giving us that. New York City's letter is a form letter. So even if your kid was amazing, stellar, got through 12 credits of College Now or other college classes, had an internship at the Queen's DA's office. I'm talking about my own kid. And they will still get the same letter as if it was a kid that just skated out of high school. It's the same exact letter. So in New York City, our letter is the pits. I'm glad it's on recording. I hope they watch this and recognize that he still hates that letter. There was something else I wanted. Oh, and there is also, I just want to mention to parents that there is a meeting that the DOE in New York City, I don't know if any others do it, prior to graduation. They did this a couple of years ago. They may not be doing it now because of COVID, but they did it prior to your child graduating. And they would call the parents in and the student in, and this kid is now 17 years old, excited about ending their homeschool career, and they would give them the option of stopping now without completing the rest of the paperwork and just signing a document saying we are done, the child is 17, and or completing your paperwork, which you don't really have to do according to them, and finishing your paperwork out. And what we were finding, we had a couple of parents that complained back to us that they would not give them even the paltry letter of completion because they had signed this document. And that meant that they were pretty much opting out for the end of the year. So they wouldn't get that document, even though they had made it up to the almost end of their senior year. And they wouldn't give them the document because they had signed early saying we are done because the child is 17. And often they wanted the child there because what kid wants to keep homeschooling if they don't have to? If the DOE says I don't have to, of course I'm going to sign this document. But at that point, they stopped allowing them to send in paperwork. So we say, you don't have to go to this meeting. You can tell them no, thank you if they start that meeting again, because it's not worth it if you can get even the paltry letter that they're offering. It's something to work with. So I would say if they offer that meeting, I would give you the advice of disregarding that particular meeting. It is not mandatory, but it is a way of them getting out of that last little bit of that letter that they really should give to you. So it was the letter of completion, the meeting prior to graduation. Does anybody have questions? And you can target a particular homeschool if you're interested. So I don't.
All right, y'all, don't be afraid to raise your hand and
Yeah,
ask
'cause I'll just
questions.
start
Please
talking.
ask questions.
I'll start talking.
Tejadas, go ahead and unmute yourself. I think, I don't know if I just, but yeah, go ahead. Let me see. Go ahead.
Hi. My question is, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but we're new to this. So September is going to be our first official homeschool year. We have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. So that's 7th grade and 2nd grade. And we're very excited. But my question is, we're planning, I don't know what's going to happen, on eventually leaving New York. So if we're starting homeschool, like let's say New York, right? We're probably going to do a full year and a half, but at some point we're going to transition to a different state. How does that look like in terms of like, because New York is very restrictive. I don't know. Do any of you guys?
Tina's got some experience in this area.
Just throw it to me, why don't you? I thought you were going to answer. I would say it really depends. While you're here, just follow the regulations of what you need to do here. Follow everything else we said as far as if you have a child that's going to be college bound, look into what those colleges require, because that is going to be across the board regardless of what state you live in. So really look at what you need to do here. Now, if you go to a state that's homeschool friendly, then it may not be as hard to transfer into the school system. So whatever state it is that you're planning to move to, I would say look while you're here for this next year, do what you need to do here, but also keep an eye on what is this new state going to require in terms of homeschooling high school. If you already know what state it's going to be, I would join a Facebook group and start asking questions in there while you have time. But yeah, while you're here, you're bound by New York laws. So just report the way you need to, do all the quarterly reports, do the testing at the end of the year, which is, I think, is one thing we didn't mention, but I think everyone knows for high school, you got to test every year regardless. But yeah, do what you need to here. And if Cheryl, you want to jump in, go ahead. But if you do know what state you're going to go to, start looking at what they require there so that you know what to expect when you do move.
No, I was just gonna absolutely everything you said, Tina. The only thing I was going to add, and I forgot to mention before, like HSLDA, which is Homeschool Legal Defense. Before you move, they have a lot of people call them because they even have and you probably are not military, but they have like even a military outreach, and they have people call. Who will even ask about what's the regulations for the state that I'm in, and they will tell you. So just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you.
And I want to, there was something I had on my brain that I wanted to mention with regard to that. We had the letter of completion. There was something else at the end of the year. But I had something circled like 40 times, and it was time to pursue interest. So I'm just kind of waiting. If anybody has a hand up, I will stop talking, I promise. But this 4 years is also a great time to pursue their interests. While we are focused heavily on the academics, especially if we have a college-bound student, something that both of my daughters, now that they're out of homeschooling and have been in either college or living their real life for a number of years now, have said back to me was that, thank you for the opportunity to pursue our interests. With my oldest one, she doubled up on art classes. She was able to have an internship at a museum and teach art. She had so much time to focus on her art because we were taking care of the academics, but we also putting in the time to let her explore that. With our second one, her interest was law, and I joined the Lawyers Guild at my church. I am not a lawyer. They let me in. I did study law a little bit, and I was a paralegal for a while. And they were like, "Oh, we can probably use you." And they were kind enough to let me in, and I really only got in there so that I could get her in there and to get her near lawyers, some people that could speak the language that she wanted to speak. And they were super excited to have this team that was interested in law come in and sit in on their meetings, and they would talk about court cases they had and what was going on and what was crazy. And she loved every minute of it. And eventually she got an internship through them because they loved having her around, and they wanted to see what she would go into. And then that's what she's expecting to do in 2 years, to start law school. She's already doing all her planning for that. So my thing is, get them around. If you're not the people that are primary to their interests, if you are not an artist, but you have an artist kid, get them around artists. If you are not a lawyer, but you have a lawyer kid, get them around lawyers. What does that look like? It looks like you being creative. And finding the people and putting yourself, even if that means you have to spend time in that thing. I have a kid that told me 4-5 weeks ago that he was interested in working with animals. I didn't know that 6 weeks ago. I was surprised. I mean, he has a pet snake. I know, I'm that mom. But I didn't know he was interested in working with animals. So I went and networked, and I found a lady that said, I'll let him work with animals. I'm excited to have him. And now he gets to get up in the morning and go to a job that he really enjoys. He's almost 14. He doesn't go every day, but he gets to go to a job and work with animals. And it was because I was being flexible, fluid, and let the whole internet know I have a kid that wants to work with animals. What do you have? We have now the glories of the internet. So there was Facebook. There are my homeschool support network. And I reached out to everybody that might know. And I found somebody fell out and they were like, yes, I'll take your kid. So I would say that is an avenue, recognizing that, you know, even though Facebook is for old people, that's what they told me, it can be still super useful. There were a couple of announcements that I did make. In the chat, you'll see that Cheryl posted the website for HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They are, I think anybody going into high school should know them. Probably earlier, you should have an idea of who they are, but for high school, I think that's a great organization to know. In addition to HSLDA, I would say Brooklyn Queens Leah is also having a, what is the name of it? College, I put it in the chat too, because I knew I wasn't going to remember. College Prep for Homeschoolers. And there is a link to that one. So if you will have an opportunity to sit before Cheryl Carter, and she will go into depth on, for those of you that are interested specifically in college prep, she'll go into depth and talk more about how that works and the ins and outs of preparing a student for college. Where right now we're just talking about your high school student, and that could be a lot of things, as we have mentioned.
Hey, don't use the link that she put. That one's wrong. I updated it.
Oh, okay. Think Tech Mom. And you should have a Tech Mom.
Hey, was my
Can I
link,
add something, Jackie?
was my link wrong, Tina? I was trying to put in HSLDA. I hope I put the right link in.
No, your link was correct. It's just that it didn't have the HTTP, so it won't.
Oh, okay.
But it's fine.
Okay.
Hi, Shalon.
So I just wanted to quickly add to what you were saying, Jackie, about high school and kind of exploring their interests, because I think that was what was exciting to me about high school as opposed to the other grades, was just allowing that this be an opportunity for them to explore interest. And one of the things that I would recommend is the Exploring program, because it's a program that's done in the city. It's for New York City high schoolers. And what it does is it pretty much gives them a sneak peek into what different careers look like. So for example, if you have a child who thinks they might want to be in the hospitality field, they'll have like these programs where they'll go to a hotel and they'll meet with someone and they'll learn the different aspects and different jobs that are in a hotel. They've got one at LaGuardia Airport, and each week it's a different part of LaGuardia. So one part it might be like the air traffic control. Another time it's the big machines that help to shovel the snow in the airports and fire and that kind of stuff. That they have their own fire department, which I didn't know, but like the airports have one separate from like the regular and FDNY. So it just, they have construction companies and restaurants. So just whatever, legal, right? Like my son realized that he liked criminal justice because he got to go to the Brooklyn DA's office and kind of get a sneak peek into what that looks like, what criminal justice looks like, and the different types of jobs that are available and out there. So that was helpful for us, and I would definitely recommend that program. It is free again. I tell people all the time, I know exactly what I have and don't have in my pocket in my bank account. So if it's free or low cost, I'm all for it. But it's a great program because it really does give them the opportunity to see what kind of jobs are out there, because most of our children don't really know what they want to do, but they have kind of an interest. And so this kind of allows them to see it. I remember one time, I think he did one with a company that builds video games, and they had to sign this non-disclosure thing, and it was because they were going to get to see this thing, so it's just a nice opportunity. The Museum of Natural History, they offer science classes that are free for high schoolers that are after school hours, and they can kind of, if they're into science or just like it, they can add that to it. And my kid was really into science, and I added that to our transcript because there were classes that he took and he learned different parts of science. So there are definitely programs out there for high schoolers to explore their interests, to explore what they like. The Children's Museum of New York used to have the YAC program. They stopped that like a year or so before COVID, but it was if you had an artsy kid, it was a way for them to kind of go and learn some art and different avenues of art and drawing and painting and that kind of stuff. So there are definitely things out there. My second is an aspiring actress. That's what she wants to be. And so I've been looking for programs that kind of will allow her to explore that side of what she likes. So there are definitely things out there for your children in high school that allows them to explore their interests and kind of get an idea of what they might want to do later on. And I feel like this is the best time to do it because they get to, rather than you waste whatever thousands of dollars in college for them to kind of figure out what they want to do, while they're in high school, they can start dabbling into different things and get an idea of what they like and they don't like. Because it's, in theory, you can like something, but then when you actually see what the work looks like, you might be like, oh, yeah, I don't think I really like that. So just wanted to put that out there.
Siobhan, could you see if you could find the Explorer website for us? Because I've been looking and can't find it. And that was
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and Jackie, that next question is for you. But yeah, along the lines of what Shalon was saying, that's exactly what I was saying, especially because I don't have a college-bound kid. We're going to explore as much as we can in terms of where his interests are for high school, while at the same time, me being the structured mom of we got work that's got to get done. But me being open to, okay, what do you want to learn about? What are we doing here? Like this year, he really wants to learn about coding. So I'm looking into coding programs and things like that. And he's specific, not JavaScript, Java. I didn't know there was a difference. Apparently there is. So we're looking into that now. And he's made friends online. Me being the cautious mom, like, who are you talking to? But they talk to me. They're respectful of me. They know I harass my son because he says he's 5 feet tall. And I said, no, you're not. Because my little 5'3" stuff is like, no, you're not 5 feet yet. Leave me alone. But anyway, I digress. So how to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
I see Taheda's hand up. Is that the question about classes that Bukulia has?
Yes.
Amazing.
And then I just have one more thing. I'm sorry, I'll be fast. Just that question, and then if any parents, like, if we wanted to like network with parents that maybe have kids into music and like to make like a little band where kids can be creative and like, you know, just make songs and just have fun with music, like how could we go about that part and then also the classes part? Thank you so much.
I can tell you for Brooklyn Queens Leah. So classes that we have a co-op. Why am I being? It gives me a glitch. I'm sorry. I think it's Shalon. I don't know. So we have what's called a co-op, and for parents that are unfamiliar with a co-op, it is a cooperative of parents teaching together, and that happens twice a month for about 3 months in the fall, and then again in the spring. And with co-op for all of our kids, we have the pre-K through kindergarten, the 1st to 2nd, 3rd to 5th, 6th to 8th, and then the high schoolers have their group. And each one has 3 classes for the day of co-op, and that could be whatever the parents decide that those 3 classes will be. So we have a mandatory co-op meeting for any parent that is interested in having their children participate, and during that time, we come up with classes we would like to see in that group. For high school, we have had classes like poetry, we've had government, we've had literature, we've had creative writing, we've had, I'm trying to think, financial, what's the word for it? Financial
Literacy.
That's the word. And a plethora of other things that would be on par for that group. I would say that for Bukulia's co-op, some classes have been classes that I have found that were stringent enough that I might add to my transcript, but not all of them, because we don't necessarily, as a co-op, keep them very stringent, because our aim is more toward having time together and learning together, not necessarily being super heads down the entire time. But some classes have been that stringent. I think they had a government class recently that I was like, wow, that was pretty in-depth information. I would put that on a transcript. And I did a psych class that I think might have been able to be put on a transcript. So that was the first question. What does Brooklyn Queens Leah have? And if there are groups, now we do not have groups at this point that would be for music or something along those lines. But that's not to say we can't. We are, I guess, a growing group. And I'm also, as one of the chapter leaders, I'm super excited about new clubs. So we do have a group of our kids that are into social media, and they have done the work of creating some of our social media platforms. They do our Instagram and some of the things on our Facebook, some of the posts.
You're killing me. I created it.
Yes.
They did me the favor of taking it over. So
They took it
kudos
over.
to them because they have been fantastic.
So
But
if you look on our Instagram, you'll see
yeah.
a lot of what they produced. That group also created the logo that you see for Brooklyn Queens Leah. And also a couple of them work on our yearbook every year. But if it wasn't a social media group and you guys wanted to put together a music group, I would be super excited about that. If you wanted to put together a drama group, I would be the chapter leader trying to find you a location where drama happens. So we have other classes outside of our co-op. We also have Science Day, which is a standalone day where our older kids do dissections and our younger ones do experiments. We have Art Day, where all of our kids do the same lesson, but they walk away with, I think we've done terrariums and clocks that were made out from records. And there was a stained glass one that they did. So standalone days also. But I think Dora has a question. And keep an eye on the chat because lots of cool links are going in there from Shalon and Cheryl and Tina.
And before we get to Dora, I just want to add, because I'm not sure where you're at. I'm assuming because you asked specifically about Brooklyn Queens, I'm assuming that you're in the New York City area. But outside of New York, don't be afraid to do research for your county groups. Almost every county in New York has a homeschool group specific to them. And those are fantastic places to go and look and say, you know, especially if you're not part of a particular group, like we're partial to Leah, so, you know, join Leah. But don't be afraid to go into those groups and say, hey, my kid is into music. Is there anyone else in this specific area that might be into music? Let's get the kids together and let them form something amazing. Okay, I see. So let them form something amazing, you know, and you'd be surprised. You let those kids loose, they come up with some amazing things. Go ahead, Dora.
Hi, I just want to say thank you very much for doing this. This is so helpful. At the same time, it's very terrifying. You added so many more questions, but I've had a friend who did homeschool last year by choice, just because of her kids coming out of COVID and they were having some issues acclimating back to school. She did program that was Time for Learning, I think, or something like that. And I think I would want more of like a different structure, more of like a Seton Academy if I was going to start my first year doing it. Just because, again, I'm terrified of all the New York regulations that everybody's talking about. And it really is terrifying to see what they require. I haven't read through that whole thing yet, but everybody's saying you really don't have to. But I don't know why do they put it there if I don't have to read it? And if I was going to homeschool this year, first question, that I would have had to put in for it by July 1st already. But then people are telling me not to worry about that. Okay, thank you. Because I was terrified. I'm like, well, then I missed my opportunity and that's already gone. So thank you for shaking your head.
Can I answer that before you go? Because I'm sure other
Please,
people have said
thank you.
the same thing. Okay, so the New York State, the school year runs from July 1st to June 30th. If you read the regulations closely, I think it's paragraph 1, and don't quote me on the number, but within the letter of intent, paragraph 1 does say the letter of intent is due by July 1st. The next paragraph says, if you are starting in the middle of the school year, which is anytime after July 1st, then you have 14 calendar days or 10 business days. I can't remember exactly what the wording is, but it's either 10 business days or 14 calendar days to submit your letter of intent from the time you have decided to homeschool. Now, if your child is enrolled in public or private school, that means, let's say it's October 1st, let's just pick there, October 1st, and you've decided you're going to homeschool. You can withdraw your child from the school, and by October 14th, your letter of intent needs to have been submitted. Most people do it the same day, doesn't matter. Just know that you have up to 14 days once withdrawing the child to submit your letter of intent. For ongoing homeschoolers, the regulations say July 1st. Now, here's the caveat with that. A lot of times, people homeschool from year to year. They don't know that they're going to continue homeschooling. So
Right.
whatever district you live in, wherever their first day of school is, then you have 10 business days after that to submit your letter of intent. Not everyone submits their letter of intent July 1st. Some do it later, some do it in August, some wait into September when school has already started. Now, I don't recommend waiting that long,
Some
but
people
you
are
have
just
all
slow with
summer
their
to make that
paperwork.
decision. Go ahead, Jackie, what?
So some people are just slow with their paperwork. That's me. I am those people.
That too. But you have up to 10 business days after the first day of school in your district to submit your letter of intent. After that, then you start running into truancy issues. Okay,
Okay.
go ahead with the rest of your question.
So with that being said, do I have to keep in, and I know everybody has their style of teaching and how everybody either does a structured way or they just don't do it like book way. They might follow an online program. I was going to try an online program for the first year, and if it worked out for us, I would play it by ear after that if I can get the hang of things to do it on my own. But someone also said that you needed to be in line with the school, like when they teach, for instance, 2 + 2 is 4, that you need to be in line with when they teach 2 + 2 is 4. So at the end, you can make sure that they've learned equivalent to what they've learned. And I was like, well, is that true? Because then I don't understand. Why would that be?
Okay.
And then they said, well, because basically when you go to high school, that you want to keep up with them, and then maybe you can graduate with a high school diploma. And then somebody said you can't graduate with a high school diploma because you didn't go. So you can choose to go back in your 12th year, and then they can say that you've graduated with a high school diploma if you put your child back in 12th grade. So there's like a whole, and I'm like really lost with the amount of things that you hear and what you can research, because some of it is just bull. And I'm just really lost.
Okay. Can I ask how you found our workshop tonight? What group? Or
Okay,
what
I was
post?
well, I Googled homeschool networking, like because I'm in Staten Island.
Okay.
And believe it or not, I can't find anybody in Staten Island. It's like nobody in Staten Island homeschools.
Well, I mean, Jackie
Or
was
they do it in
originally-
secret.
No, actually, you
I know some homeschoolers I can connect you with if you need to.
Yay.
Oh, that would be wonderful, because I am
Is
totally
Cheryl
lost.
in?
So
Is
you
Cheryl-
strictly went through a straight Google search and found us?
I just went into Google search and I found you guys. And then I found the other legal site that you had posted.
Yep.
That I was going to join just to get more information,
Mhm.
because I didn't know where to go and where to have my questions answered.
Okay.
Cheryl, you know locations in Staten Island, right? Is that right?
Okay, so first thing I would say is go to the Brooklyn Queens Leah website and fill out our contact form so that we can get your
I
information.
think I did.
Jackie, you want to see if we saw that? I'm not sure. I don't remember. They all go to you now. Okay, so You asked a lot there. There's a few things to touch on there. So I'm
My
gonna
brain
say
is exploding.
it's okay. It's okay. I'm gonna say short answer is no, you don't have to be in line with what the public schools are doing. What the public schools have to follow and the regulations that homeschoolers follow in New York State are two different things. If your intent is to have your child re-enter school, then that's a different story. Then you might want to be in line with what they're teaching. But again, as I said at the very beginning, a high school, we really recommend to be an all or nothing. Lower than that, you can put them in at any time. And most of the districts just put them in their age appropriate grade. They don't care what you've done or haven't done. If your child is, I'm going to use the lower numbers because those are you. If your child is 8 in 3rd grade and supposed to be in 3rd grade, normally they just put them in 3rd grade and then figure it out from there. So yeah, New York State tells you by the regulations what subjects have to be covered. The topics that you cover are completely up to you. That being said, there is something to be said for skill subjects versus content subjects. Okay, the skill subjects are your math and ELA, where those kind of go by grade, where if you pick any curriculum, their 1st grade curriculum is usually a 1st grade subject. The majority of curriculum that I've run across has been advanced compared to what the public schools give. So I don't think you ever have to be worried about in those lower grades, your child being behind, unless they're a struggling learner and there's other issues to be dealt with that. Again, high school is a whole other beast, and we'll talk about more of that as we go. But Cheryl, you want to add
in the
something?
middle of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a 9-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 12-year-old. So I have a 4th, 7th, and 8th grader.
Okay. Cheryl, you want to add something there?
Well, no, when you mentioned the age of your kids, I think you're probably worrying I was going to say something, but I won't get into it because I think you're worrying prematurely when you mention the age of your kids, because it's more important just that you teach them. For instance, even in high school, yes, we have to cover math, but you don't have to go in exact sequence as public school. As a matter of fact, I worked with a young man once, and I said to his mother, just developmentally, he would do better in geometry because he kept failing algebra. We did geometry with him first. Then we even did analytical geometry. Then he went back and did algebra 1 and 2. And the mom was really surprised. So sometimes your kid, if you think about it, is just developmentally. So that's why Tina's saying that really, if you're gonna do it in high school, you really want to do it all the way. I did want to mention one thing, because, and Tina, I agree with you 1,000%. I will say though, and this might not be germane to New York City, but in Long Island and upstate New York, when I've had kids who do enter school, typically what they will tell them to do is they have to pass the regents. So depending on your kid, now I knew one set of kids, they just took the 5 regents and they entered in and they accepted it with the regent score. So if your kids can pass the regents, sometimes, I don't know the New York City schools have did it. Like I said, I've only worked with Long Island kids and upstate kids. They did do that in terms of getting in. So I just wanted to mention that. So I don't want anyone who might be
That's what I was
panicked,
worried about, the Regents exams.
but they don't have to take it.
They don't.
They don't have to take it. As a
I
matter of
thought they
fact,
had to take them.
no.
The Regents is strictly a New York thing.
Yeah.
No other state does Regents. So if your child is applying, let's say for college anywhere else, they don't even ask for Regents. Regents are strictly a New York thing. So when applying for college, only New York colleges will ask about the Regents possibly, but it's not, nowhere else is. So it's not, they don't have to do Regents as a homeschooler.
And actually, Shalane, even in New York City, because private schools don't do regents. So actually, right. So even in New York State, they won't necessarily ask about it. You know, I've had parents brag about their kids getting high in the regents, and the regents is just teaching to the test. So anyway.
And I had a kid in SUNY, and SUNY never asked for the regents either. So
So is there somewhere that they have, just for argument's sake, just as a study guide, if I wanted them to know the information that was in the Regents exams, just to have that knowledge as part of my lesson plan? Is there
Can I-
somewhere that I can get that?
Can I ask
And
why?
this way we could just, without being tested, just to have that as part of my curriculum?
Hold on 1 second. Maria, is there something urgent? I'm sorry. I saw your your real hand.
Oh, okay. Hi. I was going to say, so Engage New York gives you, I think it's engagenewyork.com, kind of tells you what each class or each grade level does in New York. It's like a section of modules and, like it's not really required. But if you are curious about what your child is learning in English or in math, that is all aligned in Engage New York. So I also had other questions, but I can wait.
No, I'm sorry. And my only other last question was, as far as PE was concerned, how do you prove that you've had PE to, it's not like what do you take pictures?
They don't
How do you
ask you for
prove that the
proof.
child did physical education
They don't
and
ask you for
have it
proof.
logged?
They don't ask you for proof. You went
There's
for
no-
a walk. You went for a walk around the block. That was your PE. You did some jumping jacks. That was your PE.
Yeah. To be
Danced
honest,
around the house. That was PE.
Yeah. To be honest, Dora, that's a question you can ask about any subject, right? Like, how do you prove that you did anything that you put down you did with your child, right? This is just really your own honor system, right? Your own saying, I know I did these things with my child. Now, can somebody say, yes, I did all these things and did nothing? Absolutely. But for your own records and for your own thing, especially if there's someplace, there's a goal for your child to go to, then you'll just kind of keep track of those things. But you just need to say that you did it, and that's it.
And I would say
Okay.
that in addition to what Siobhan said, that as homeschoolers, generally we want the kids to have that information, be it, having taken financial literacy or whatever it is. We want them to have passed these classes, done. If I say he was in swim team, I say he's in swim team because I really want him to be a strong swimmer, not because I want the colleges to think, wow, he's a great swimmer. They don't care. At the end of the day, I'm trying to really create by force for swim team, but by inclination for their, whatever their passions are, to help create someone that they want to be. Give them the skills through my time and effort that they want to be by taking them to swim class, by making sure that they finish their math. Because once they get to college, they're going to need that math, or they're going to need that information that was supposed to happen during those classes. So while it is honor system for like PE and stuff like that, what's the point if I'm not giving him the things that I said I gave him?
Right. That was my question, because I like to do that with them, anyway, through the summer, whatever it is, we do summer work. We don't let, the summer slide happen. So we do things like that, but I also do other things that'll help them through next year with, money, time, penmanship, other important stuff. But I just wanted to know, like, how would I prove that to them? So it didn't make sense to me, but as long as it's not, anything that I have to worry about. Because my friend, like I said, she went to put her kids back into school this year, and they were asking, did you do PE with them when they were remote or homeschooled? And she said no. And they said, well, then she's behind. So how do you judge that? Like, that was just baffling to me. Is New York that regulated that it's, even though it's a charter school?
PE is a required subject. Was she homeschooling or was she doing distance learning?
She was homeschooling with timeforlearning.com.
Okay, so here's my problem with Time for Learning, and I love Time for Learning. Well, I loved Time for Learning. Time for Learning does not cover all of the required subjects for New York. And that is where the problem is. If you're using Time for Learning and you're looking at the list of subjects that you're supposed to cover for New York, PE is not in there. You're on your own for PE. You got to find something else. Same with art and music. If you're not paying for the extra art that T4L has, I don't even remember if they have music, but I know they had a separate art program. So you have to, and I tell people this every year, read the regulations. There's always going to be something that's going to pop up that you might have missed before. So you have to read and understand the regulations.
I started reading them and it sounded almost like French.
Well, that's why I did the quick sheet, the cheat sheet. But if you are doing homeschooling and you're following New York State regulations, then whatever her district office is should have caught, and I'm going to say should have because depending on what district you're in, they're either reading your reports with a fine-tooth comb or they're not reading them at all. And I will tell you, for New York City, there are only 4 people in that New York City homeschooling office that deal with the paperwork of roughly 5,000 plus families. The last one I saw was over double the amount of children. So 5,000 families, assume most of them have 2 or 3 kids. That's a lot of paperwork for 4 people to handle. You understand?
Yeah.
Now, for you, I did send you a link to contact us because I do want to get back to specifically high school. Your kids are not high school age. So I think you are, like Cheryl said, putting the horse before the cart.
Okay.
Not bad to know. You want to know the information, but you got a few years before you get there. So you got plenty of time to learn all of this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I was just worried about my 8th grader because then, her going into 8th grade now, I was like, well, if I continue this, then I was worried about, the tests and everything, if I continued to do it where they required and what have you. But okay, definitely.
So, yeah, I
will look
want
at
you
the
to
links.
reach out to us on that contact form, and then we can talk you through more a little bit. The other reason I want your information is because I admin 3 Facebook groups with regards to New York State regulations. And in one of those groups, we went in detail over how to deal with the regulations. So I want to get you into that group if you're on
Really?
Facebook so that you can watch those, and that'll answer a lot of these questions that you have.
Because it's
Make sense?
frightening. It's really frightening
will
looking
be.
at it. It's
Dora,
like 15,
Dora.
20 pages.
Dora, take a deep breath. Right now, I'm serious. Right now, take a deep breath. You're going to be fine. I understand it's scary. You're going to be fine. Okay. All right. Reach out to us. We'll help you out. We'll be in contact with you. All right. You're welcome. Go ahead, Maria.
Oh, hi. So a couple things I just want to comment. For Dora, I think that maybe you can look into deschooling. If any parents remove their kids this year or any year, like look into deschooling and just be with your children. Read with them, explore the parks with them, and like there's just like this little period of for you to just come together as a family. I also wanted to say that with co-ops, that parents, you have the power to form co-ops on your own. So if you're looking, and I mean, we're upstate New York, we're very rural. A friend and myself, we thought we were going to do this co-op this year, and it was just going to be the 6 of our kids, and that would be it. We ended up having 22 families who were interested, many of them who said that this was like, a blessing to them that they prayed about. So anyway, my question, I think Cheryl kind of touched on it about the regents. I have an 8th grader and a 9th grader. I know that a lot of the public schools push regents, the only way is the regents diploma. So I know there is the letter of completion or the letter of substantial equivalency. Like, would my children have to get a GED? Would they have to, like, I'm just trying to, and maybe that's something that we can, you said there's a college prep seminar or something that we can get into that further. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I also think, and Tina, I'm kind of putting on the spot. Tina's going to be doing the workshop with me because it kind of clear to me even tonight, because I think to go over the ways that people graduate in New York State, because I think there's a little bit, not just your question, Maria, but a few other people. I think there's a little bit of confusion because some people think I get this letter and then I go to college and that's it. So because Tina knows the regulations, I think we probably and I don't know if you want to go with Tina, like what's the ways that how people finish, um, because, and I don't, if I don't know if I recall all, it's been a while. I do know the GED is an option for us. It wasn't an option because I didn't want my kids are not high school dropouts. Um, and Tina, you could tell me if anything has changed. I know the 24 college credits where they get grandfathered in, so they don't have to take the GED. So if you're doing, again, I'm not going to jump into my workshop, but there's ways for your kids to get 24 college credits before they even graduate, and they don't have to go to college to do it. That's the way. I don't remember all of them, Tina. See, that's why I said you're going to be doing it
No,
with
it's
me.
fine. Yeah, we can definitely touch on that before we get to your part. I think that'll be a great segue into that. Because people want to know.
Yeah.
And I want to say that there are 4 ways, but I'll have to research because the ones I know off the top of my head is the 24 credit option, is the requesting the letter,
Right.
and taking the GED. But I swear I remember another one, and I'm gonna have to look
The
for it if I'm sure.
accredited school.
That one's iffy though. It depends.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean
does.
you can, but you still have to report. But we can definitely
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
that.
I don't. Yeah, so I don't remember. You're more of an expert in that than I do because I don't remember it. Sorry. Um. So was that your question, Maria? Like, and oh well, in terms of the regions, the colleges don't even look at it, and I think Chalet could probably, because your child just got in recently. The colleges don't look at. They don't say what did you get. They don't say what did you get on the regions. They really don't care. It's just it is a New York State thing, and um, to me, I feel like if you want to put your time into your kids taking AP or CLEP or DSST classes, something where they're going to get college credit, not just the score. Because okay, I'm being recorded, but anyway, my opinion of the regions um, is that I have put it this way. I have tutored a kid who they went in and they took the 5 regions and they just passed it in 2 weeks. They just took the 5 regions to go back to high school. I had another kid who was really struggling at the writing. He took a writing, I tutored him for a while, actually a Brooklyn Queens kid, and he got an 85 on the writing thing. He was not really even passing class. So uh, the regions is you could teach to the test, and you don't need to. This is my opinion. You don't. It doesn't really. It doesn't really test much. Just my opinion.
And I'll just add, Maria, like I said, I have a college age child, and he never took a Regents, and he did not do a GED. He just was homeschooled. He took the SAT. We put his transcript together. We talked about the things that he's done, and that alone got him into the colleges that he got accepted to.
And I'll tell you, because Cheryl won't say it. Cheryl won't say it because she does other stuff that's more official. I'm not. I'm a ex-nurse homeschooling my kid. I was not having my kid take the GED. I'm sorry. Regardless of what people say, the GED in a lot of areas still is frowned upon because it makes your kid seem like a dropout. And they say no, and a lot of people I've spoken to, they say no, that's not true. That's not no. A lot of people that I've spoken to, you either get a positive or a negative, but the GED still has a negative connotation to it. And I'm sorry, but I went through 4 years of high school, public school. I didn't have to take the GED. So if I have to report for my kid for all 4 years of high school, and you're going to tell me, because I'm going to get this rinky-dink letter from New York City, that my kid has to take a GED to go to school? No, I didn't spend 4 years, blood, sweat, and tears learning right alongside with him for him to have to take a GED. That's not fair. Tell me where that's fair. I'm sorry. I wasn't doing, and I went off on a whole rant, and I apologize. No, I don't.
I want to do a
We're
rant.
not doing
Can I
that.
do a rant? Can I have a rant?
Yes.
Because I was definitely Tina, probably 3 years ago. And I was like, my kid will never do a GED. And especially the kid in question at the time was my academic. I mean, pristine academics, beautiful child. She did all the things that you wanted her to do, plus some. And she got into great schools. And the last school she got into was St. John's. And that was like the school she wanted. And their response to the letter of completion from the DOE in New York City was get them either to change the letter to say letter of equivalence, get them to change the law. And this is in 2 weeks before she's supposed to head off to the dorm. Get them to change the law, or I forget what the third one was. Oh, or take the GED. These were her choices. And I wasn't going to get anybody to change the law, although I almost did. I wasn't going to be able to get the DOE to change their letter. They were adamant. They would not change it. And I had so many people working from inside and outside of places trying to help this kid who was phenomenal. And finally, we did what St. John's wanted. And I said, okay, do you want to take this test? And she was like, could you just let me take the test? Let me get this over with. I want to get into school. I'm tired of this fighting with schools when I know what I can do. And St. John's knew what she could do because they had already offered her all these scholarships and into all kind of awesome programs. And she took the GED, which I was so heartily against, because why should she have to? This was saying that she was pretty much, she hadn't completed high school, which she had. She had 12 college credits to boot. She was that kid. And she took the GED. We weren't happy, but she took it and she passed everything with high marks, super high marks, but got it done. And I'm still not happy about that. I would still fight it today because I don't see why she would have to. It was like completing the 4 years and then having to complete it again almost with this test that they required. And I even spoke to the man in charge of the GED, the task test in New York, because I have a mother-in-law that knew the guy. And he said, I want to speak to this mom of this kid that you say is so phenomenal. And I had a conversation with him. And after talking to him, I sent him her resume. I sent him her transcript. I sent him, there was another document I sent him. And he looked at it. He said, this test is not for this kid. He said, it is a great test for people that need it, those that didn't complete high school, but this kid did it in spades. Why would she take this test? And we get that in homeschoolers a lot, where they have completed high school in spades. They have achieved way higher than was required to get out of high school. But this test is still like somebody's, thumbs up for it. So I'll still say to today, I don't think it's a test we should have to take. I don't encourage any homeschooler to take it. In the case of my kid, I was like, if you want to, we will do this heinous thing. And we did it, and she's okay. And going into her third year of college, so finish ranting.
So see, Jackie, if it were me, I would, that person that said this was not for her, that's in charge of the task test, I would have had that person write that letter and send it to St. John's and say, look, you made her take a test that the person in charge of the test says she shouldn't have taken it. Just because sometimes I can be a little petty. I shouldn't be, but I would be that person. So.
So you're not alone, Shalon, because I would have sent them, I would have sent it to New York City, because they would get that. The main issue with them, because they wouldn't, two words of this exceptional child. And I say it because it was not my child, but I love that girl like she's my own. I know what she was capable of, and I was a sounding board at times, and I'm sure she had plenty, but I was one of Jackie's sounding boards as she went through that whole mess, and I was as upset as she was. But all of that being said, last call for any questions, because we have been on here for 2 hours, and this is a topic that can go on for hours, but our panelists do not have hours. So if anyone else has one last question, Shalon, I'm gonna give it to you in a second. If anyone has a question, raise your hand, and if not, I'm gonna let Shalon speak, and Jackie, you get to close us out. Go ahead, Shalon.
Dora, I put something in the chat. I don't know if you see it, but it's called SICHE. It's connected to Leah, but it's a homeschool group, so that might be a good resource for you in finding some other Staten Island homeschoolers.
I did see it, and I thought it was just for Christian. I didn't know if it was open to everybody. Okay.
That is a good question. If it is a chapter of Leah or Homeschool New York, it may not be open to everyone. Brooklyn Queens Leah is open to everyone. We've had Muslim and atheist parents come into our group. We also had a Jewish lady that was very interested. She did mention it. So some groups are open, some chapters are open to everyone. I would investigate, but Cheryl may have some more information there.
Okay. I mean, we're
They
Catholic, it's
they
important, but I would go
oh,
anywhere, you know, as long as
they
it's a welcoming community. That doesn't matter to me.
oh well one of the things that Jackie didn't mention that I've done, at one point my husband and I were the chapter the regional reps, and so I could tell you they're sick. That's what I would say. I couldn't think of the name. Thank you, Shalane. But they are open to all members. It's just they are open to all members, so you don't have to be.
Now, Sarita, do you have something to say? I see you in the chat.
Oh, hi. Okay, let me put my face on here so everybody can see what I look like. I just sent a little memo there. I just wanted to encourage all the parents here that are pursuing homeschooling for the first time for your high schooler and slash middle schooler and elementary, but particularly for high school. Sorry I couldn't chime in and give you my experience, but I have one homeschooler who's in high school, and I have to tell you that I can relate to that one parent who lives in Staten Island who was terrified. That was me. And I have to say that all of the mothers or the parents and the families that have been with Leah for over 10, 15, 20 years, every one of you have been very supportive and always been available to help me through my crisis. And that was my own crisis because I was always terrified every 2 months from the inception of joining the homeschool community. Yes, I was trying to leave every 3 months. And so all these parents, all these mothers, everyone, they held my hand, they encouraged me, they cheered me on. I just did what they told me to do. Yep, I did what they told me to do. And even when they told me to do what I needed to do, I was still terrified, but I still did it. And I hung in there. So I'm 6 years completed homeschooling, and I'm going into my 7th year. I wouldn't have it any other way. I would not have it any other way. If there's anything that I can tell you is just learn, obtain as much knowledge and information about what true education is, what academics is really all about. Learn a lot about yourself, your child, and give back to your children. You own your children. You're the one who is going to put into your children everything that they need to know academically and also to live in this world. So trust in what you're giving to them, trust the community, because we've all been there. We have experienced some less and some more than others, but you're always going to learn something about everyone, whether they're just beginning or exiting or in the middle of it. So I am available if you'd like to contact me and reach out to me privately. More than happy to return your call, your email, whatever, and just answer any questions that you have. I'd love to encourage you.
Thank you, Sarita. Shalon, go ahead.
Hi, Shalon.
Hi. So I just wanted to add one more thing, because as people are talking, I'm remembering all the stuff that I wanted to talk about, but of course, I didn't write it down, so I forgot. But another thing that I wanted to say is in the college, applying, it can become costly, right? Because you've got application fees and all these different things. The thing that I learned is when you go on these physical tours, a lot of the schools will give you like a little card, and there'll be a little something on it, and you use that, and then you don't have to pay the application fee if you apply to that school. So just keep that in mind. You can cut down some of your application fees for colleges. If you go in person on these tours, they usually give you a little waiver. So if you do, like almost an incentive to apply to their school, but when you apply to their school, you won't. It'll waive the application fee. So that's just a little tidbit of information. But there's just wanted to put that out there because it can get costly. There's scholarships and there's money out there, so look into those things. And yeah.
Thank you, Shalon. We are going to end out, but before we do, I just want to thank everybody for coming and for all your great questions. Maria, on her way out, said something beautiful. She said, give yourself grace. And that's so important where we are right now, when we're screaming and scared, and grace, because we can do this. And honestly, you have people in your sphere now that you know, Tina, me, Cheryl, Shalon, Zareda, and there are more. I've had other moms say, if anybody needs some help, they can give me a call for high school. I can help with that. So you have some people. Get in touch with us. Let us know that you've got a concern in an area, and this is what we do. We would love to help. We don't want you to be as scared as we were way back. You don't have to be, because you have people. Not all of us had people. So take advantage of that. And thank you for coming to our workshop. It's being recorded, so if you need to look back for some information, come on back. Check us out on brooklynqueensleah.com. And we also have YouTube. And there is another meeting on the 15th, another workshop for the college bound. So keep an eye on Brooklyn Queens Leah. Y'all have a great night. Good night. Thank you, ladies.